Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer Jankauskas, Curator of Art at the Montgomery Museum of Fine Arts, and I'm so happy you can join us this evening for our new program, Creative Conversations. Since we're not yet able to invite you into the galleries to view our exhibitions, we're happy that you can join in from the comfort of your home to learn a little bit more about some of the works in the exhibition, Personal to Political, celebrating the African American artists of Paulson Fontaine Press. This evening, we've invited two artists from our community, Lynthia Edwards and Milton Madison, to respond to works from the exhibition that inspired, challenged, or resonated with them in some way. Before we start the conversation, I want to tell you about the exhibition. Personal to Political features the work of 14 African American artists who have helped to shape the contemporary art conversation. This is a particularly timely exhibition in light of the recent and senseless death of George Floyd, along with too many others, and the ongoing protests around the world. The artists of Personal to Political give voice to personal narratives and political discourses of African Americans across the country. Their works reflect a collective experience expressed in individual ways. The works are both figurative and abstract and speak of the human experience from past and present, while also presenting ideas about history, identity, personal stories, and spiritual inspiration. The exhibition was organized by the Bedford Gallery Lesher Center for the Arts in Walnut Creek, California, and the presentation at the MMFA is sponsored by the Alabama State Council on the Arts, with additional support provided by co-sponsor Renaissance Bank. Tonight, as I mentioned, we have two artists from the region who had the opportunity to preview the exhibition and select some works to reflect upon. The first is Lynthia Edwards. Lynthia was born and raised in Alexander City, and she started art making at an early age. She has an associate's degree in graphic design from the Art Institute of Atlanta, a bachelor's degree in art education from Auburn University of Montgomery, and a master's degree from the University of Alabama at Birmingham in art education. Since 2011, she has taught art for the State of Alabama Department of Youth Services School District, servicing adjudicated male offenders. Her expressive pieces have been featured in numerous exhibitions and are in private collections throughout the United States. Hi, Lynthia.
Hi.
Joining Lynthia is Milton Madison. Milton was born and raised in Birmingham. After graduating from Alabama State University with a degree in graphic arts and design, he began pursuing painting. His works have been featured at the National Center for the Study of Civil Rights and African American Culture, the Birmingham Public Library, and the Rosa Parks Museum. Milton has also taught art at That's My Child Youth Center, and please take note, Milton will be our artist in action on June 27th on our MMFA Instagram Live. So thanks for both of you for joining us. We're really happy to have you, and I'm excited because I think each of you work in ways that resonate with the artists of Personal to Political. Yeah. Like them, you're each bringing in your own experiences and personal history into your work. And I thought it would be great to start with showing a couple of your pieces, and you could talk about how those experiences that you've had inform your work. For example, Lynthia, you often focus on young Black girls as your subject, like you did here in this collage piece, Strawberry Lemonade. Will you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, well, Strawberry Lemonade is a collage piece and the actual character was built from various Black girl faces because I wanted it to encompass various attitudes and looks, different types of hair, just to make this one Black girl, all the different features to create this one Black girl. And I wanted to create her to be like the not so typical Black girl. I wanted her to have short hair. And I also wanted it to be in black and white, just so you could get a sense of vintage versus contemporary, being the color of it. I wanted to also capture the idea of boutique style clothing. So that's why that skirt has all those different colors in it, bright colors in it, as well as bring in the history of quilts and patchworks and things of that nature. So yeah, that's pretty much Strawberry Lemonade. Yeah.
Well, I love how you have those kind of conflicting feelings of past and present, contemporary and historical here. And I think there's also this sense of like seriousness and playfulness both happening too
Yeah,
simultaneously.
yeah.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. And you, Milton, too, also bring in a lot of personal symbolism into your work. And uh, this piece I've heard you talk a little bit about, and that's your daughter, isn't it?
But no,
Based on,
it's not my daughter.
no.
It's kind of, it ties in with my daughter and some
Okay.
questions that she asks, but it's called Don't Forget to Smile. And it's kind of dealing with a lot of the things that happened during the last probably 4 or 5 years ago, when there were about 3 or 4 different police murders of Black men, and then the riots happened and the protests happened, and my daughter asked me about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of use the image of a young girl as, you know, my model. Is more so about just overall the perception of Black people. And once you see us with guns, what does it mean versus, you know, white people with guns? And, you know, what is our weaponry? What do we use to defend ourselves and try to protect us from going back to where we were and experiencing what we've experienced? So she has books and she has the gun. A lot of times a Black person with a gun is perceived to be violent or whatever you may perceive a Black person with a gun to be. But a lot of times you see a white person with a gun and they're just, you know, holding up for their rights, you know, or their children are hunting at 5, 6, and 7. And so things like that are just the difference in seeing the same thing on a different playing field. And those are the tortured souls of our ancestors in those trees. So that's what that symbolizes. And it's a heavy piece, but at the same time, the balloon is there as a reminder. Don't forget to smile. So it's one of my deeper pieces. I like to kind of leave it up for interpretation and not try to just pigeonhole someone into thinking one thing about it. You know, I want it to be a conversation piece. So
Yeah, it's definitely provocative. I mean, I think by putting those elements together, it has to be. And yeah, I know when I heard you talk about this before, you talked about the faces of the ancestors being in the trees. So this is a piece that probably is wonderful. It is to see it on the screen, seeing it in person is probably that much more powerful.
thank you.
So the next slide is yours, Lynthia. And when we were talking, I don't maybe want to give too much away, but you had mentioned that this was a self-portrait.
It is. It is. It's a self-portrait. It's me.
What age were you at?
I was 8. And it's significant to me, and where I am today, because I grew up in a very strict religious family. My father was a pastor of a Pentecostal church, and so I didn't wear shorts or pants until I was like 9 or 10 years old. And at that time we moved from a rural setting to what was considered the city. And so it's basically capturing me at a transition in my life. And so what I found out when I got to the city school system was that I wasn't the smartest kid. You know, it's kind of like, oh, everybody else was smarter than me, and I didn't get the attention that I thought that I deserved. And so it's titled Gifted because I was the Black unicorn, and I went unrecognized. And so on this piece, there's badges and pins where there's these circles, and the circles are supposed to represent brownie badges. And so to put a spin on it, what I would do as a kid was I would create my own badges. I would create my own pins to represent me and my accomplishments. And so if you ever get close enough to, you know, see those pins, it just kind of tells you a little bit about who I was and what I was becoming at that age and time.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love just sort of all of those different elements you're bringing in, that you're growing in so many different directions. You have so many interests that you're representing there with all of those pins.
Yeah, I fall in love with Lynthia's work. Every time she talks about it a little bit more and more, it's like peeling back the layers of an onion. You learn a little bit more and a little bit more. I can't wait till the Lynthia Edwards documentary comes out.
Keep your fingers.
Well, Milton, your last piece was so personal. And I think the next work is personal in a different way to you, because Miles Davis is somebody you found inspiration in, right?
Yeah, my late uncle is a big jazz fan, and I think I got a lot of just influences overall from him, good and bad. But this is one that I enjoy embracing. He's a kind of a reincarnation of my uncle. My uncle was cool, charismatic, and laid back, and he was just one of those guys. And Miles Davis music always reminds me of him. And this is titled "The Cool," and I just kind of felt like the positioning and the characteristic of him holding his horn and just kind of sitting back, peeping out the scene, maybe looking at the audience or whatever he's looking at. It's just nothing's really bothering him. But if you know Miles from documentaries or watching interviews, he wasn't for a lot of the BS. He was a very no nonsense type of person, and I think that gives you your edge in your creativity, because it is an art form. A lot of people can critique you, so you got to have that edge. You got to be able to cut the BS whenever you need to big up yourself, to congratulate yourself and pat yourself on the back and say, maybe they hadn't gotten on this level yet. I'll give them some time. But yeah, my dad and my uncle were really big jazz fans, and that's just another form of music that I enjoy.
Well, and I love how you in this portrait of him, and it of course from the side, the face and the fingers are still, but you've captured all this movement and that sort of frenetic energy, of a jazz musician, at the same time with the looseness that you have on the side of his arm and the back of his shirt. And so I really love that, because I think it just, gives you both that essence of coolness, but it's implying all that extra energy too.
That was my first finished piece where I was exploring, trying to loosen up with my art. I have a unintentional tendency of getting very detailed and tight. And so that was one of my first completed pieces where I think I successfully executed a more looser style. I kind of lost it in the horn, but I like the way that the horn is, that's different from the other piece,
Yeah.
It's kind of like he's holding a sticker almost, the way that I've gotten it.
Well, I'm glad that we had this chance to kind of see who you both are through your work, but we also gave you the opportunity to go into the exhibition so that you could look at some of the works that are part of Personal to Political. And I actually found it really fascinating that out of the 14 artists, you guys overlapped on several works that you were really drawn to. And in some ways I wasn't as surprised too, because I can see, after knowing your work, why you might be drawn to these artists. This first piece by Radcliffe Bailey, In the Garden, was selected by you, Lynthia. Do you want to talk about why you chose this piece? And I know that Milton also was, although he did not choose Radcliffe's work, was really inspired and struck by it as well. So I'm sure, Milton, you can add some to the conversation too.
Okay. Well, the first thing that I love Radcliffe Bailey, and I love ephemera and old photos and just things from the past. The paper, anything that's old, I love it. And so the piece also captured me simply because of the fabrics, the velvet swatches that are adhered to the picture. It just reminded me of a quilt. I love quilts. And it also kind of strongly connected with several of the quilts, and one in particular that was in the show as well. But it was simply like the color, the greens, and the various intensities of green, and how it connects with the grayscale, or I guess it was a grayscale of the photo in the center. And it's beautiful. And then if you'll look at it in the background, it kind of looks like there's a chlorophyll spill or mud that just wound up being spilled on the background. And it just drew me in automatically. So yeah, and I definitely saw garden when I looked at it. Yeah, and so and then also, like, the picture in the middle, it shows all these kids, which from what I know about various photos of African Americans gathered like that, is usually like some type of academic scene. Maybe it's an all black school, and that's the one photo of the year that they have of all the kids that attended that school. So yeah, and then I'm a school teacher, so I automatically was drawn to it, and I want to know who each and every one of these people are. And if I don't know them, I try to figure out, oh, she was probably the playful one out of the bunch, or she was the one that was the bad girl. And so naturally, I create my artwork is all about girls. So I found myself going through there and picking out each one of the girls. So for me, that's really what drew me in.
Yeah, and I think because you use so much collage in your work too, I could see why this would be interesting to you as well.
Right.
Yeah, I love the piece when I first saw it, and I looked at the kids.
Milton, did you have any thoughts about it?
Yeah, when I saw the piece initially, I immediately thought about the kids as being seeds. So when you talk about in the garden, a lot of times, we take our children and say that they're the seeds, and we have to prepare them for harvest to make sure that what we pour into them, they grow and bear fruit. So I just thought about how in this piece, what type of fruit are they bearing? And overall, through all of the adversity that they've probably gone through and will still go through, they still have greatness in them, and that star symbolizes the greatness. So I looked for symbolism in this piece tied into the title, and I would have chose it, but I knew Lynthia was gonna choose it too, so I didn't want to overlap because I knew she was gonna get it. So
great minds think alike.
Yeah, I got you.
Milton, I love that interpretation, and I just think that's so fascinating and really profound. I love that. And if you can look closely, there's all these music notes in there too. And you think of children's song, and again, that's kind of like a hopeful kind of thing too, if you look at it from your point of view. But yeah, a wonderful piece. And my guess is, I don't know for sure, but Radcliffe Bailey often pulls from family photos. So this may be something that he found from his grandparents, and something that they had. But he's often using his own personal imagery in the work.
Right.
And then you both selected the next artist, but you chose different works. Milton, why don't you talk a little bit about what drew you into Kerry James Marshall's work?
My first love is drawing, of course, and illustration is just something that I'm always drawn to. The more detail, the better, as far as my eyes and my visual. But execution wise, like I said, sometimes I like to do a little bit less detail, but this piece was just a perfect blend of detail, surrealism, and it was almost like visually seeing a dream. And so me and Elizabeth sat in there for a minute and just kind of looked, and you can't really see it right now, but there's another lady down on her knees behind the tree.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just kind of wondering, what is she doing? And then you may not be able to see it as well, but the lady that's standing up, the main character, she's chunking coins into the wishing well. And so we were thinking that as soon as she leave, I'm gonna go and get them coins out of that well. That's what we were thinking, you know, just playfully thinking about it. But I love the flowers and the hearts, and just everything about it is just, it was engaging. It was an engaging piece.
Sort of a fantasy.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. For me, I just kind of, I didn't get so much that the figure in the background was a female. I was thinking more so male, but that just maybe my female perspective. And she's, you know, because there's these hearts coming from her, and she's wishing for some type of love, and it's kind of like careful what you wish for, because he's right behind this tree, you know.
Yeah, that might be that. Hey, I like that one better, but I think it just had it kind of looked feminine, because I guess I would have expected it to be a little bit more broader if it was a male. But I like that. I like it a lot.
Yeah, and I think the artist, you know, was, you know, I'm not sure if that's male or female in the back, but I think definitely, you know, Kerry James Marshall, you know, he's talked about wanting to kind of bring art historical works into a new realm with featuring Black, you know, protagonists and at the center of the works. And, you know, this is based on a pretty well-known piece, Rococo painting by Fragonard, where the woman is swinging on a swing. And I think he absolutely brings in those kind of fantasy and, you know, kind of bountiful elements with all the flowers and the hearts and all of that. And, you know, he's really kind of putting something hopeful out there, I think, you know, something positive.
Right. And displaying Black love.
Yeah.
In a positive.
Kind of makes you feel like Snow White almost. It's got a Snow White feel to it.
Yeah. Well, the next one, also by Kerry James Marshall, and Lynthia, this did not surprise me at all that you selected this, because I really do see that, you know, the way that he's approached portraying this woman is similar in the way that you approach portraying some of your girls and women.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm familiar with this piece. First off, Kerry James Marshall has inspired me so much in my work. The nerve, he's given me the nerve to create these Black subjects. And one of the things that I gained from him is who cares if that reflection spot on the skin is bright white, you do it. And so what I've taken from him as an artist is that the reflection spots on my people, or the girls that I create, are the brightest spot on them. They're going to be pure white, as pure as white as I can get them, so that it stands off and you get the feel that this is Black skin, and it does reflect this one little speckle of bright light. Also, in the eyes, he put the eyes have this white spot in them that just kind of capture you. And I really love how he's created this female or woman natural. Like this girl or this woman, I can go and find her right here in downtown Birmingham. Like she's I can relate to her. She's a cousin. She's so real. The short hair. She doesn't have, you know, this the perfect hairdo. She's looking at you side eye with this kind of smug like look at you, like, you know, I'm checking you out and I'm trying to see if you're watching me, and if you're watching me, I got a problem with that. And it's attitude. Yeah, and it's so personal. So I think that she draws you in and then pushes you away, just because she's so dark skinned. And, you know, for someone's skin tone to be that dark, it's naturally going to capture your attention. However, he contrasts her with that white background. And I think that is just so brilliant to me. And he also puts her in this plain clothing, and the clothing doesn't overpower her face or her expression, which is kind of sort of what I do. I think that all the beauty and all the work should go into my faces, because I want that to draw you in and want to question who the person is, and try to get you to develop a relationship with them, and try to figure out if you know them, and if you do know them, who do they remind you of, and just kind of create a dialogue between you and the work. So yeah, love that piece.
Yeah, she got that attitude, like, I'm gonna cut you.
Yeah, you know her.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, and it's so interesting because the title of the work is Untitled Woman. So she is sort of like every woman in a way, but then she's so relatable, like, yeah, I know that person, you know?
Yeah.
Well, another artist that both of you selected works from, but again, different works, is David Huffman.
Yeah.
Yeah, this piece, it spoke volumes because, you know, I like basketball like a lot of us do, and they're trying to get back to playing right now. So seeing them in the hazmat suits is really like surreal, because of course this is 2007. So like I said before, you guys planned this pandemic perfect to go with these art pieces, because so many of them just speak to the time, and the basketball players being isolated like that. And I'm not for sure, of course, that that's his interpretation, but it jumped out at me, and I just thought about how, you know, something that we love so much is being taken away from us. And now they're going to have to go and play in these isolated domes, and they're calling it the bubble. They're going to have to be in Orlando. Them and their families, they won't be able to move and go anywhere. They'll be playing in stadiums where nobody will be, just for our entertainment, just to give us some relief from what we're going through now. But they'll sacrifice and do that. But let me not say sacrifice, because they're making millions of dollars. But they will do that just so we can be entertained. But hopefully we won't lose track of what's important right now. And I think, like I said, it's really important that we look at how art is an interpretation of life. Life imitates art, and art imitates life. And this is, I think, a strong piece that represents that.
Yeah, it's amazing how it speaks, like you say, exactly to this moment where we're all trying to social distance and protect ourselves, and it's kind of taking it to that next level with isolation in these suits. But I think for David Huffman, from what I understand about this piece, he's actually thinking of these as astronauts. And he's called them traumanauts, because he's, you know, brings in all of his work so many symbols and stereotypes that relate to being Black here in America. So we'll talk about that a little bit with some of that symbolism and stereotype imagery in the next piece. But for him, from what I understand, he has kind of likened this to the fact that, you know, slaves came here to the US and they were brought here, and it was new land. And he's kind of drawing these parallels to exploring and going new places, and, you know, not necessarily always having control of situations.
Right.
But let's talk about the next work by him too.
Yes. Okay. So this piece for me, well, the first thing that I noticed was, of course, like the traditional basketball. And so I see it just scattered throughout the entire pyramid. And I naturally wanted to say, okay, I'm thinking in terms of pyramid. Who's at the top of the pyramid?
Mm.
And so as I worked my way to the top of the pyramid, I started to see, you know, lots of different colors of pyramids, which to me, I kind of thought of, I kind of connected those with various races of people who actually play basketball, or the pyramid just being the pyramid of life, like who's at the top, who's the top of the food chain, who's the top of this thing that we call life. And then I kind of started to see the red, white, and blue basketball scattered at the bottom. There's more still towards the bottom versus getting towards the top. And so I kept trying to form a connection with the red, white, and blue being perhaps Harlem Globetrotters is what came to my mind first off. And then I started thinking, no. That's got to be a symbol for America and the various individuals or people that make up the melting pot. So I that piece, it was quite provocative for me. I just could not settle on one idea or one direction that I wanted to go in with it. And I'm still kind of, all over the place about it. So yeah.
I like your theory a lot. And when you delve a little bit further into that theory, I guess one thing that you see is you don't see any Black basketballs. Mm-hmm. But again, if we're going into a color thing, whether it be a brown basketball or a Black basketball, it would just kind of, create a conversation right there. But there are a lot of brown basketballs in there. So
right. Mm-hmm. Or for instance, when we were titled colored.
Yeah.
I tend to use colored in my works, especially if it's an old photo. I try to say, okay, well, that was when she was colored, and my take on it was when we were called coloreds, and I just put a whole bunch of colors in the skin tones. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I tend to go all over the place with things. So I'm still trying to figure this one out.
And that's what's cool about art, the interpretation of just having a conversation for each individual to be able to give a perspective about what they see.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I think is fun about this program, is that we can know a little bit about some of the intentions of the artist based on statements that they've made, if you want to dive in, but you don't have to. You can come in and look at a work of art or see it on screen and take something out of it that's meaningful to you and that challenges you and makes you think about things in a different way.
Yeah, because we didn't even mention the tree, and I'm sure that there's some significance in the tree.
Yeah. Any thoughts on what that might be?
I always see any type of trees or plants as growth or new life. That's what I always think about.
You're an optimist.
I am.
Well, there's one more piece then that you selected, Milton, very different in tone. And that, of course, is Gary Simmons' Starlight Theater. What drew you to this?
I don't know. I think I would like to think that a lot of people see it instantly and think the same thing that I think. But just all of the energy and the rage and the riots that unfortunately has plagued a lot of our communities and cities. And like I was telling Elizabeth, I understand a lot of that rage. I don't condone it, but I understand. And I listened to the Joe Budden podcast, and one of the images a couple of weeks ago, actually two of the images that he used for his podcast when the riots first started, they were burning buildings. And so I just thought that this just looked like a marquee or the drive-in theater overhang as the cars go under to pay their money to go to the drive-in, and it just looks like it's on fire. And I just thought that, again, that speaks to what we're seeing right now, whether or not that's the intention from the artist or not. I couldn't stop looking at it. The orange and the yellow and the way they complement each other. It's just, it's beautiful, but it's painful at the same time. But that's what I got from it.
Yeah.
I think that's fairly typical of his work, that it has that feeling of fire. And again, something that, you know, is so pertinent to what is going on today, but also references history. And, you know, it's that integration of all of those things that are happening in this exhibition. This was the last piece. And Lynthia, if you want to say a few words about this piece, feel free, but I would love to have you both maybe give some thoughts about the exhibition overall. And, you know, we didn't have a lot of time. We had about half an hour. We've gone a little bit over, but we'll have you give a few last minute reflections and then see if there's any questions that people want to have answered. But just your sense of the exhibition beyond just the works that you've picked out to talk about tonight.
I saw a lot of works that I feel like tied into, you know, what we're going through now. And again, it's just really, it's eerie how, you know, life and art can interpret things in different ways. There was a couple of pieces, and I can't remember who the artist was, but they were like magazine articles, one-page articles. And
yeah, Edgar Arsenault.
And some of those pieces, again, they look like it was the militarization of what we're seeing now, the martial law being implemented. And I think it may have been I don't know if it was the Watts riots.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that spoke volumes too. And then the quilts, I just felt like Lynthia should have been somewhere in this show. I felt like she should have been somewhere in this show because I know she's been down in G's bend. She's been moving and shaking, and I just really thought this was a show that she probably would have really enjoyed. And I was glad to be on this conversation with her to hear her point of view.
Yes. Oh my goodness. You know, I saw myself up on that wall. One thing that I do, and I don't know why I do this, whether it's reading a book, a magazine, or a show, I tend to go backwards. And so what I do is I try to look at the work first, and then even if I don't know who it is or whatever, I wait till the end to find out who it is and what it's about.
Titles. Yeah.
Right. And so then that gives me the opportunity to try to answer some questions that I did have. And it's like, you know, because it's kind of like mathematics for me. I'm like, I want to take it all in and just give me the answer at the end. So for me, the show was so inspiring, and it just basically proves that history repeats itself. As well as, you know, art is life and life is art. And so I was really appreciative of the opportunity to view it and, you know, just give my opinion on it or figure out which ones were just, I was connected to. And I have to piggyback with Milton on the quilts. I was in heaven. I stood there forever, and I just went around in that square for the longest. I love Souls Grown Deep. And so that was an area that I was drawn to and just couldn't wait to get to as I was going around and viewing the pieces. I loved every one of them though. Every one of them really like pulled some emotions out of me that I just didn't even know, you know, things that, you know, I may not have been able to just pinpoint exactly what it was, like the abstracts and those, but it was just like something about them was like totally pulling out emotions that I had never even experienced. And maybe it's the time and the current event that started to, you know, started to force me to try to connect with the pieces. And being African American and looking at these pieces and knowing that there had to be a connection, and me trying to figure out what it is that that it was. So yeah, loved the show. She loved it.
Well, you know, I'm so happy to hear both of you say that, and that you really got a lot out of the exhibition. Hopefully we'll be able to open the museum soon so that others can come in and see it. We will have the exhibition on our walls until July 26th. So, you know, we would really love for the public to be able to come and see it too. But one other interesting note that I wanted to say about this exhibition too, was that as you were talking about the quilters from G's Bend who have made prints, and we have a few quilts there. We talked about Carrie James Marshall, another artist in the exhibition, Lonnie Holly. They're all artists that have ties to Alabama. So that there's another connection too, which, you know, it was really exciting to us when we decided we wanted to host this exhibition.
Right.
Yeah,
and
I didn't know that at first. And when I started seeing, I'm like, oh, he's from Birmingham. And, you know, that was kind of like interesting to see, you know, multiple artists from this area.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, I know we've gone over our allotted time, but I do want to find out if we have any questions. See momentarily if we do, and if so, I know you two would probably be happy to give some answers, and I am as well. We'll give that a moment. Or perhaps not. I don't see any coming through.
I think it's a little bit of a delay though.
That's true. That's right. We'll give it a moment longer.
But while we got the time, I want to say I'm super grateful for the opportunity to be able to come in and be one of the first people to see this show. It was an excellent show. It was an excellent show.
Right. So thankful.
Well, and I just want to express my appreciation to both of you for participating in this program and for your very thoughtful insights and reflections on this work and what you were getting out of it. Again, as you were saying, Milton, it's, you know, so much about how you interact with it, each of us as individuals, and what you get out of art. And art is just such a powerful mechanism to convey so much. And if we open ourselves up, you know, and allow us to have that experience with it, it can be, you know, exhilarating, challenging, so many different things. I did just get a notification about one question about the tree. And I'm not sure if this was about your tree, Milton, in your piece, or the tree that we were talking about in David Huffman's piece. So maybe we can kind of talk a little bit about both of them. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the tree in, well, here, we'll look at David Huffman's. You saw it as something growing and hopeful. Lynthia, do you have any thoughts about what that tree might signify?
I guess it would have to go along with him, with his understanding of it as growth. However, the soil or the area in which it's growing, that's the only growth.
Yeah, it seems a little barren.
Yeah, the soil is rich. It's nice and dark, and it looks rich. It looks, you know, like something could happen. However, it's just right there. So,
yeah. Well, let's go back and talk about the tree and Don't Forget to Smile too in your piece, Milton, in case that was the question. All of those trees there.
Like I said, there's a lot of different emotions that I wanted to convey and different thoughts that I wanted to explore. But you all, if you can see how all of the trees are kind of like reaching in like a creepy kind of eerie, scary movie type of, they're reaching in toward her, but it's reaching in toward her to empower her, you know. So like I said, all of the hearts and souls of people that have been lynched or beat or murdered, you know, they're tortured souls, but they're empowering her to move forward. And another thing that I wanted to play with is she leaving that city, or is she leaving the wilderness and going into the city? Which one of those can be interpreted as the lesser of the two evils, so to speak? So she's saying kind of like her farewell from the city and entering into the woods, or is she leaving the woods for one last time and saying goodbye as she goes into the city? So just different interpretations, but I know that a lot of the people can't probably see the faces in the trees. Yeah, from my screen, I can't really see them, but that was what I wanted to kind of throw in there.
Well, they're almost, the way that you have placed them so that she's encircled by them, it's almost protective too.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we have any other questions. So again, I want to just thank you so much for participating in our first creative conversations, and let everybody else know that we have a second creative conversation happening on July 8th. And that will again be at 5:30, and we will feature two artists from the exhibition, Lava Thomas and Radcliffe Bailey. So I hope everybody can join back in for that, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks again, Milton. Thank you again, Lynthia.